The rain had stopped just before dusk. The courtyard of the palace still shimmered with puddles, each one catching the last pale light of the sky. Lanterns were being lit along the carved wooden balconies, their glow spreading like small fires caught in glass. The air smelled of wet stone and jasmine, sweet and heavy, as though the whole night were holding its breath. Inside the royal chambers, the bride sat quietly. Her veil of silver thread slid over her shoulders, pooling into the folds of her gown. She was young, barely 20, and her hands trembled slightly as she held them in her lap. Her name was Inara. She had been told since childhood that one day she would marry a prince, that this moment would come. And yet, sitting in the silence of her new life, she felt a loneliness she could not explain. The doors opened. The prince stepped in. His dark robe brushed against the marble floor, and his crown of gold and emeralds glimmered under the lanterns. He was tall, graceful, with the kind of beauty that made servants lower their eyes. His voice, when he spoke, was deep, but not harsh. "Tonight," he said, pausing as though the words carried a weight, "I will sleep with my concubine." Inara's head rose sharply. She thought she had misheard. The chamber was so quiet that she could hear the faint crackle of oil in the lanterns. His gaze was steady, unreadable. "With your concubine?" she asked, her voice faint, almost breaking. "Yes," he replied, not cruelly, but as if stating a fact he had decided long ago. "This is our wedding night, but my heart belongs to another. You are my wife by duty. She is my love by choice." The words settled between them like stones dropped in a pond. Inara felt them ripple through her chest, cold and heavy. She had imagined many fears for this night, but not this. She had thought he might be distant, or strict, or even unkind. But to hear him speak of another woman in their marriage bed, that was something she had no defense for. For a long moment, she said nothing. The prince did not move closer. He did not sit beside her. He seemed carved of marble, as though waiting to see how she would respond. Finally, Inara found her voice. "Why do you tell me this? You could have kept silent." He looked at her, and in his eyes she saw not arrogance but a strange kind of sorrow. "Because you deserve the truth. Lies at the beginning would rot everything that comes after. You are my wife, and for that you deserve respect. But love I cannot promise you." Inara lowered her eyes again. The veil slipped further, and a single tear fell onto her hand. She had been raised to expect sacrifice, but not this kind of rejection, not so sudden and so complete. The night unfolded slowly. He left her chambers before the candles had burned halfway. Servants whispered in the hallways, carrying the news across the palace. Some pitied her. Others mocked her misfortune. Alone in the great bed, Inara lay awake, staring at the carved ceiling, listening to the endless silence. But silence does not last forever. The following days brought routine, ceremonial meals, greetings with courtiers, the endless demands of palace life. Inara walked through them as though she were a shadow. Yet behind every step was the sting of his words, and then came the whispers. The prince's concubine was not a stranger to the court. Her name was Lara, a woman of uncommon beauty and sharp wit. She had been by his side for years, long before this marriage was arranged. Some said she was the true queen in all but name. Others said her influence would soon be her undoing. One evening, by chance or by fate, Inara met her. It was in the gardens, where the lilies floated like stars across the pond. Lara approached without fear, her crimson gown moving like fire in the twilight. "You are the princess," Lara said softly. "I am sorry for the cruelty you endured, but you must know he loves me. He has always loved me." Inara looked at her, studying her face, her confidence. For a moment, jealousy rose like a storm within her. But then something gentler came. She thought of the prince's eyes that night, heavy with sorrow, and of her own loneliness. "I know," Inara said at last. Her voice was calm. "But love is not always enough. A crown is heavier than the heart." Lara tilted her head, surprised by the answer. She said nothing more, only bowed slightly and disappeared into the shadows of the garden. That night, Inara sat again in her chamber. She thought of her wedding night, of the words that had cut her. But now she also thought of the prince, caught between duty and desire, and of the woman who claimed his heart. She wondered if perhaps her place was not to fight for love, but to find her own strength in another way. The twist came quietly, like dawn. Days later, the prince returned to her chamber. He looked tired, as though torn between two worlds. For a long time he did not speak. Then he said, "I wronged you. I thought honesty would spare you pain, but perhaps I only gave it a sharper edge. You were forced into this, and yet you carry yourself with grace I cannot match." Anara met his eyes. "You did not wrong me by loving another. You wronged me by believing I could not bear the truth. But I can. I am not made of glass." The prince was silent. Something shifted in his face, a softness she had not seen before. That night, he did not leave. He did not touch her as he might have touched Lara, with fire and urgency. Instead, he sat beside her, speaking little, letting the silence become less of a wound and more of a bridge. The days that followed did not erase the past. He still loved Lara, and perhaps he always would. But a different bond began to grow between him and Anara, built not on passion but on trust. On the quiet courage of two people learning to see one another not as enemies, nor as strangers, but as companions in a difficult life. And so, in the stillness of the palace nights, with rain whispering against the windows, Anara learned that even the harshest words could open a path to understanding. The story of their wedding night remained, carried in whispers by servants and courtiers, but Anara no longer flinched when she remembered it. For she had discovered something deeper than heartbreak, the strength to stand in truth, and the power to shape her own place in a world that had given her no choice. And the prince, though his heart was divided, found in her a presence that steadied him when duty pulled him in all directions. It was not the love she had dreamed of as a child. It was not the fairy tale of lanterns and roses, but it was real, and in its quiet way it was enough.